Alrighty, hey yo, what is up, Knights? Just Rick here, back with another episode of DFO Crash, this time on my Paladin. And guys, I did receive some great feedback after my first video. I got a lot of great reception, especially about the question that I posed there. Would you guys like or dislike a pros and cons? And it seems like you guys definitely want that, and I'm glad you guys enjoy that. Just know, it should go without saying, a lot of this stuff is, you know, my subjective opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. Anything that you hear on the internet or anything in general, take it with a grain of salt and form your own opinions about it. But these are mine, and here are my pros and cons for the Paladin. Alright, first things first, this is the most important. I think, guys, she is straight up the most versatile character in the game. She is invaluable in all in-game content, and she has enough damage, speed, and AoEs to make her also one of the best farmers in the game as well. Next, she is among the few synergies in the game with speed buffs, and she is the only synergy with both healing and AoE defensive capabilities. It is a very unique club, and she is the only member. Now, tanks and defense are often not a selling point in most beat-em-up games, but Paladin has a means of blocking most attacks or outright cheesing through full gimmick attacks, making her party survivability high and death rare. Now, in terms of the things that I don't like about Paladin, okay, number one, she is incredibly brain dead, and as my second main, it's almost like night and day compared to EK. Hardly any gimmicks to speak on, and has a face roll type gameplay. The next thing, this is kind of minor, but level 35 skills in this game are generally supposed to straddle the line between decent damage and relatively low cooldowns, and personally, I don't like both of the level 35 skills on the Paladin, even with the talisman system. And lastly, she does have some lag sensitive skills. In particular, I'm thinking of one, Obstruction, that will whiff in lag, and that skill just so happens to be one of her highest level skills, and that is pretty devastating. Luckily, there will be a talisman in the level 100 cap that will fix that to some extent. And with that, pros and cons, guys, we are going to do something interesting in this video, something that I probably will not be able to do nearly to this extent on any other character on my account, and that is farming Bonanza. Okay, I'm going to prove to you guys how good this character is as a farmer, but of course we're going to do the most important thing that we should be farming, 2+2, hands down, especially if you're strong enough to do it. I mean, if you're not strong enough to do it, I guess you have an excuse why you shouldn't be doing 2+2, but not really, honestly, because it's just something you really got to hope that you can. I would just say accelerate your content. Just do whatever you got to do to get into here so you can start farming this ASAP, because you're really missing out for any time that you're not spending farming this. You're just falling behind more and more. So, but guys, 2+2, obviously, I'm going to pretty much be showing this on most of the characters that are going to be in this series, and you know, you'll get to see a little bit of how good their AoE is in different areas. You guys can see here I'm already starting to run out of skills. Well, that's fine, because we're getting close to the end anyway, and I won't need very many more skills because this character is pretty decked out in terms of damage. So, in fact, so decked out, I can just kind of waste one of my first awakenings and not have to worry about using it for the boss. So, quick run right there. I did forget to showcase my gear a little bit. Right here, you guys can see pretty much we're rocking a very similar, I always call it a meme setup, but you know, it's a bunch of 3-3-3 and a 2, my epic weapon. Don't ever sleep on these sets, guys, because let me tell you, they're often, you know, they're very common, they're very easy to make. They're probably the easiest sets to make because you aren't relying on so many pieces. In fact, there are a lot of different ways that you can make this certain setup that I made, especially using some of those so-called meme epic sets, which are 3-piece sets. You can always just, you know, interchange them with any other pieces, and they're really, really useful in that regard. So just kind of throwing that out there, that it's very common to have a setup like this, and also just expect it to be pretty dang strong. And in Paladin's case, especially with the Pandemonium Flame I got, I think it works out very, very well. So let's talk a little bit about the Paladin. Of course, I talked about the farming. We're going to get to that, but the Paladin itself, when we're doing harder content, is also nothing to sneeze at. It's not just farming, oh, let's just use this character to farm easy content. She is pretty strong in her own right. Now, she is a speed synergy, which is, you know, I gotta explain what a speed synergy is, because most of you guys understand there's a lot of synergies in this game. They make up a pretty big portion of our are cast is characters who provide a synergistic effect that is a 34% damage buff just by existing, basically. And this character is one of those synergy characters. However, being a speed synergy is a special classification of those synergy characters. A synergy which provides a speed effect, a speed up effect, which is, like I said, it's a very rare effect to see on a synergy. Most of them just give you the damage buff. You oftentimes won't get a speed buff, but you know, there are some of them out there, you know, it's rare. This one can give a speed buff by virtue of her feathers. Anytime you see this buff right here, Seraphic Feathers, you guys can see 32% move speed, cast speed, attack speed, and hit rate as well. So she's yet another character who can provide hit rate. This is mostly to herself, though. I think that is capped towards party members, but nonetheless, usually synergy characters are not the ones that are going to be providing any speed. So it's a unique class of characters. You know, there are other ones that do that as well. You know, you have that option, the speed option, available on characters like Godfather can do it. Female Nen can do it. You know, these are speed synergies. So if you ever hear me talking about speed synergies, it's just a synergy that also provides a speed effect, which is generally pretty rare in this game. So, and you know, the caveat to being a speed synergy generally is that they don't do very much damage, you know, even more so than normal synths, although that's just kind of conjecture. I don't think that's really, you know, I haven't really done all the math on it, but just don't get worried, don't get twisted up like, oh shoot, it's a speed synergy, this guy's trash and is only for synergistic effects. I think a lot of people fall into that misconception on Paladin, but I'm here to show you she can do some damage. She just needs some gear just like everybody else, and she's going to be wrecking things. Oftentimes my Paladin is very often beating things way faster than even my stronger Elven Knight, who's a Deeps character, beating her out in content because she's just faster and she has better skills and better AoE and, quite frankly, just a better character for that kind of stuff. And that explains, and I mentioned this in my last video, that explains why it's my Paladin who is my highest training accomplished on my account. And I do indeed have, you know, an entire collection of characters that I play and do varying content on, but it's the Paladin who receives the highest honor on most abused, most used on this account, because again, like I said in my pros and cons, she is one of the most versatile characters in the game. And to prove that, guys, farming Bonanza, let's start. Okay, so we did 2+2. We're gonna do that pretty much every video, and I think that's 2+2 is a good, it's a good yardstick as to see how good the character's AoEs are in terms of how strong she is as well. And it's a good yardstick to use, and it's just a dungeon I'm going to be doing anyway. So get used to it, guys. Those 2-2 dungeons are not going away. You should be doing them, and you should just be loving them. But guys, we are currently, I'm going to be speeding through a lot of different farming content. First and foremost, First Pit, okay? Ever since they got rid of the TOD, which was my favorite farming location, they've instead replaced it with this area, the Pit of Incarceration. And usually I go down the First Pit, since it is the fastest. You guys can see speed run like crazy. Probably only rivaled in terms of speed of how fast you can clear that by characters like just cheapo characters, like, I don't know, maybe Ghost Boy can beat her, but, you know, it'd be a pretty close race on that. I could go into the Spirit Heaven if I didn't already go in there already, so I'm going to go ahead and skip the Spirit Heaven today. But let's go ahead and move on to some of my favorite content, and some of the most, I think a lot of people don't sleep on this. They know about it, but I don't know if everybody capitalizes on it, guys. And that is DC. I am indeed the mayor of DC Town. I love Dawning Crevice because it is essentially free hell mode. This is a free hell mode. I don't know any other way to put it, guys. It is also brain dead easy because obviously we're in level 100 cap and everything's going to kill. If you go to any content that's in a previous cap, in fact, for most of the rest of this video, you're going to see me just one-shot everything. And we're talking 15-second hell mode, and it's, you know, slowly but surely building your way towards an epic that you can craft if you want, although we'll have to farm some assault mode, which I'll show off in a second here. But, you know, you're building your way towards epics crafting that way, or you can just get one to drop outright if you're lucky, which, if you're running it on a lot of characters, especially ones who can do it within 20 seconds, you're gonna often just get an epic to drop right, and you won't have to craft anything. You don't even need to craft it. Just go ahead and run this shit, and you get items for it. You do get a little bit of aberrant crystals. You get a little bit of gold, but again, it's kind of why
I love doing DC because you always have the chance of getting epics. By the way, the reason we did Pit, I forgot to mention it, is not for the sky fragments. You are not doing it for the sky fragments. You are doing it for the items right here, which you can sell to the NPC for gold. So you guys saw when I opened my mail there, I got a whole bunch of white items. You can sell them to the NPC, or if you're the type of person who's trying to amp your gear, then you can go ahead and disassemble them and get a whole bunch of clear cubes that way. It's a great way to get them. Another place that we can farm, guys, and I'm going to go ahead and jump into it right now, is the assault mode. Now, Donning Crevice is obviously very important to try to get your epics directly for epic souls and for farming GOW. It's just a free hell mode, like I said. But assault mode is for crafting those epics if you're not lucky enough to get them to drop outright. But there is one other thing that you might be sleeping on when it comes to both of these dungeons. Donning Crevice and assault mode are also great places to farm cursed or amplified gear. And what I mean by that is, if you look into my gear right now, a lot of my gear will have this pink dimensional stat on it. And not all of them, because I'm still working on it. But you guys can see my shoes here, my shoulder, my top, you know, these accessories right here. You'll see this pink stat on there. And what those are cursed stats on there, requiring the amplification system to utilize. Now, you can farm them here in assault mode by killing the final boss, and every time they drop equipment outright, it has a chance of being cursed. And if it's cursed, you can transfer that onto any other piece of gear because of the inheritance and the engraving system at Loton. So it is a great one thing that you can't forget. I mean, yes, this is obviously the main reason we're doing this, at least a lot of people are doing this, is for the epic souls. You get epic souls from DC, and then you can craft the epic souls directly by taking this legendary and making it epic, and then disassembling that and getting epic soul that way. Yes, that is obviously one thing you can do, but don't ever forget, if you are in desperate need of some, or trying to farm up a full set of amplified gear, this is also a great place to farm it, because again, like I said, this assault mode's relatively cheap in entry. I think you just need a bunch of seed of birth. And DC is completely free, and if anything drops cursed, bam, you're set. And the cool thing about the cursed gear that drops from assault mode, and the reason why I still suggest doing assault mode, even though it's brain dead easy and takes a few seconds, is that the cool thing about assault mode is it drops a legendary, and if a legendary drops cursed, what you can do with that is use the Transcendent system and give that to an alt. Instead of using the inheritance system and inheriting an epic at Loton, you can instead, like if it was a legendary that dropped, I can transfer this legendary to an alt directly using the Transcendent system at Magar Rosenbach. So just other features you should kind of be aware of if you know about this. Hopefully none of this is new to you. If you're hearing this, you're like, yeah, Rick, I already know. I've been doing this shit since the beginning. Well, I've been talking about this shit for a long time, so hopefully you guys have been capitalizing on it. But it's only made easier now that 100 cap is out, and it's still viable. I was talking about this shit like before 100 cap came out, and it's still viable today. Unfortunately, we're not getting any drops, but that guy right there can drop a legendary, and it can be cursed. And if it's a cursed legendary, you don't have to use it on this character. You can transcend it onto another character if you so choose, which is kind of what I've done on characters like my satyrs. I've gotten them full amp gear because, you know, if I get a legendary on this character or any of the other characters I farm assault mode on, I can just give it to my satyr. But you guys can see right here, I mean, I do already have some cursed gear even on the epics that are dropping right here. Like, for instance, I have a cursed bottom, and this bottom isn't cursed, right? So what we can do, I mean, I'm perfectly in a position. I can go ahead and use the Otherverse Purifier, get the cursed stat here, and then inherit it over to these bottoms, and then all of a sudden I have bottoms that are cursed. And so I have the pink dimensional stat, and I can work with that. That's kind of how you want to kind of approach this curse system to getting all this cursed gear. But just so you guys are aware, I am indeed making a guide video on gear improvements that you can do, not just amping. I'm talking reinforcing, refinement. It's my next guide video. So if you guys are listening to this video now, just keep in mind that's my next guide video that I'm working on. The last content that I want to do here in Harlem, because guys, this is still relevant content, is Disaster Sector 3. Now I'm not going to do too many runs of this, but let me explain why you do Disaster Sector 3. Okay, Disaster Sector nowadays, I mean, back in the day it used to be a little bit challenging. People used to party up for this kind of stuff, but nowadays, I mean, we're just too strong for it. We're just going to dominate everything no matter what the level is. Make sure that you full clear this dungeon. I'm talking do all the rooms that have the extra terranium, because that's the reason we're doing this. Now also just keep in mind that your FP is going to evaporate, so make sure if you're gonna farm DS3 that you have some multiple characters that can do it, because you're just gonna run out of FP very quickly. Now the reason why you run DS3 is for terranium, like I just said, but you got to know where to expend that terranium, and I'll go to the NPCs after this run, but you can basically get a lot of features that I think people are maybe... See, here's the thing, a lot of people are very timid on getting enchantments and stuff like that, but I feel like maybe it's just because they don't know how easy it is to get really good enchantments, or just a ton of different rare cards and stuff like that. You can get them by utilizing the terranium in a lot of different places. So that's what we're gonna do after this. But quick run. I mean, I'm talking. I'm not even paying attention here, and I'm killing everything. So, and then run to the final boss and like 2-way and Bagine. He's done, and you get a bunch of terranium at the end of it. So just know that this place gobbles up your FP, so you need a couple characters, but make sure that whatever characters you farm DS3 on, they're always the same characters, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to get a lot of this untradeable terranium, and you want to make sure that you can purchase the items at the NPC and funnel all of those resources onto one character. Now this right here, the pumpkin ball NPC, is where you can pick up Harlem rare card boxes, which you guys can see right here. You can pick up 2 a day. You can pick up 1 Pandemonium card box that can be rare or unique, and these 2 methods right here are just perfect ways to get cards 3 times a day. You can pick up both of these card albums. I unfortunately don't have enough right now, but pick up both of these card albums every single day, and there's how you get some rare and unique cards. Another reason why you might need some terranium, by the way, is running up over here. This NPC, the Jonathan NPC, if you trade terranium to him, you can pick up Essence of the Rift, which is what I suggest, as well as Vestige of Hope, which is also what I suggest to deal with the Otherverse Purifier, as well as the conversion spell. Both of those items aren't required at Klonther. More stuff that I'll talk about in that guide video, but that is kind of why you farm all that kind of terranium stuff, guys. Those 2 NPCs right there just give some great items and can build up a stockpile relatively easily. I mean, I showed you guys right there. It only took me like a minute. Wanted to showcase all of those types of things, guys. On my Paladin, I want to say I do that pretty much every day on all my characters. I mean, I don't always do the Harlem stuff, but all the stuff that I just showed off right there are just farming type stuff that Paladin can make extremely quick use of her speed and her strength to do them really quickly. But guys, we're gonna go ahead and finish off the video because we haven't even talked about Paladin at all. We're gonna spend the rest of the time talking about Paladin and of course the Stormy Route dungeon. And I'm gonna show off Stormy Route. Now personally, I think I like Black Shrine a little bit better than Stormy Route because it's a more consistent dungeon, but we'll go into here just for some variety's sake. But just know that you have to pick up all of the Aelite and shit like that. So, I keep forgetting here. It's hard to see it sometimes. But anyway, guys, let's talk about Paladin. I've been talking about all this farming stuff. Paladin is such a versatile character. I mean, I've just kind of shown off right here. She can do any kind of content, is made brain dead easy, and I haven't been able to show off, and I probably won't in this series, but this character also excels really well in party settings. And the reason why is that, okay, I mentioned she's a speed synergy. She provides a speed effect with her Seraphic Feathers buff. But on top of that, she's also a healing synergy, which is the only healing synergy in the game, as far as I'm aware. There is no other healing synergy. She is, if she expends her feather, going to be exactly identical to characters like your satyrs in your parties, okay? All she has to do is cast a sanctuary buff right here, get in the circle, and you will heal to full, and you will also be shielded against most attacks and take no damage. Even if that's not the case and you don't have sanctuary available, you have your 2A. And it does the same thing with the 2A, heals you back to full. It's a healing synergistic effect, and it is completely and utterly unique amongst the entire cast of DFO. No other characters can do what the Paladin can do with those two skills. If you're a synergy, obviously the satyrs can do it, but this is the main reason why, you know, a lot of people in Korea, at least, kind of clamor towards or gravitate towards this character. I mentioned as a huge con for me is that, okay, one of the main reasons I'm playing this character is because she's a knight. She's really brain dead easy to play. Unfortunately, nothing really going on there, but the fact of the matter is she's still really useful despite that. She's a character who can abuse gimmicks and completely skip gimmicks. She's an extremely versatile character because she is such a good farmer and can decimate everything in 1 second, 30-second runs. Has some great AoE, especially with the talismans when you pick them up. And, you know, healing, speed. What else can you give a character? I mean, it is so useful as a character to doing anything in this game, which is, you know, it's rare to say that in this game. Usually a character has strengths and weaknesses. I kind of said this about other characters like, you know, Ghost Boy. You know, I said, man, he's like too good for this game. Well, Paladin is like the same situation except for synergies. She's too good for synergies in this game. She is obviously, I'm joking there, but you kind of understand. Not really. I'm not really joking. She really is good. 30-second runs with no problem. So I do want to say, you know, it took quite a while to get to this point. The one thing that might turn some people off is that this is not a character who can immediately get to this point right away. You know, you're gonna need some commitment. You're gonna need a little bit of work to get to this point. And I can't say that about some other characters which are considered good farmers. Characters like Azura are a great example of, well, a lot of people say he's a good beginner and a good, you know, he has good AoEs and stuff like that. He doesn't have nearly the speed, but at least you don't have to invest a whole lot into him to make him really good like you do the Paladin. So I'll give it up there. Paladin requires a little bit of investment to get to this point, to get to these 30-second clear times. But, you know, I think it's really easy to get to that point because you can do so much. I think all throughout you're going to be providing that synergy effect. All throughout you're going to be still a really good AoE character. I mean, it's not like you're not going to be able to do content just because you're a little bit weaker. You just might use a couple of other skills, which is not a problem for Paladins. I think her cooldowns are also pretty nice. One thing I am going to mention, and it is something I brought up as a con, is that I feel like her level 35 skills are going to be just... I haven't found a way to use them. Maybe this is just personal preference, but instead what I have done to kind of mitigate that problem, instead of having some decently low cooldown, high damage skills, is I just supercharged a couple of her low damage skills. Even skills like Disruption, which almost no Paladin I don't think has ever leveled before in the past. I picked that up just to kind of shore up some of those medium cooldown deficiencies that this character has. And instead, you know, it kind of cycles between skills that have really high cooldowns and really low cooldowns, like Wrath and Retribution. I'm just spamming those at all times whenever I can, and you guys can see that's enough damage to kill most of these enemies too. So it's just how I've made it work. I think it's an effective... it's effective at most all content that I'm doing. This kind of idea of having high cooldown skills like the ones, you know, the big boy, the huge AoE, these moves right here, those have like 40-second cooldowns. But then you can kind of mitigate that with these low cooldown skills as well. Disruption, Retribution, and Wrath to kind of, you know, you'll always have skills in the interim because of that reason, you know. And so that's kind of how I've been building my Paladin, guys, and that's why I think that's what's gotten to work so far, and I think she is just a very, very powerful character. So, guys, I'm gonna end it off with a couple dungeons over there at the 2-2 land because man, we are just making it's too easy over here as Stormy, man. We're just screwing everything over. Alrighty guys, back here at 2-2, and you guys can see here my preferred dungeon here is the Black Shrine, and you guys can see over here for special rewards we have 0 out of 2. That basically means we won't get rewarded for the dungeon clearance, the card flips at the end. We won't get any of these black crystals or epics out of it, but we still can get an epic to drop straight up from the boss, which is really awesome, and the reason I still like doing it. Not to mention it's a more consistent and very easy dungeon to do. Now we could do challenge mode, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, these are kind of for bragging rights. I do believe the drop chance is a little bit higher, but I'm talking these dungeons are multiple times, I want to say 5 times harder than these dungeons. My runs will be way longer by doing that difficulty instead of just doing the expert mode. So I don't suggest it, honestly, unless you're trying to flex on peeps, but you know, if you're just trying to farm like this video is trying to showcase, then just stick to expert mode. You don't need to go into the really ultra hard difficulty, because I don't think the drop rate increase is going to be warranted or justified for how much harder the dungeon's going to be. Now, one thing that I like doing on characters like this is waiting for the counterattack. You guys can see right there, when I counterattack that boss, he took way more damage, and there you go. I just showcased why you do this dungeon, guys. That was freaking crazy. I only did a couple runs of this as a test, but that's why you do this dungeon, guys. I mean, you get epics straight up. That's a level 100 weapon, and you can get usable epics. You can get things that you can use the epic transfer stone on. I mean, this is farming epics. It's a very, you know, that was really lucky, to be honest with you, but you know, that's why people like farming this dungeon, because instead of farming Stormy Route to get a whole bunch of time crystals and stuff like that, or time stones to farm hell mode, that's like going through 2 different hoops to try to get an epic, when you can just get an epic straight up every time you run this dungeon. So but what I was trying to say here, guys, is if you are have an awakening where you can control the damage phase, I highly suggest capitalizing on the counter attack mechanic, okay? And that's just essentially waiting for the boss to do a counterattack, and what's going to happen is you are going to be doing way more damage than normal, and especially for awakenings that have one hit like the Paladin does. It's a very, you know, both of her awakenings are just one hit or quitters, and they're great demonstrations about how much extra damage you can do on an enemy just by allowing them to you know, get an attack off first. We're doing exactly 25% extra damage by sheer virtue of just waiting that little bit of time. Not to mention, if you use my 1A like right away, he has a damage defense. You guys can see how much less damage I did. He has a damage defense buff that he gets right when he spawns in, as well as the fact that I missed out on my counterattack damage. You guys can see here I do a lot more damage now. So just a little pro tip from the pros. You can't always do this. I'll say characters that have a lot of their slower awakenings, or awakenings that load up on the back end, and you know, you can't capitalize on, you can't really control the hit as well as characters like Paladin, then it's harder to do that on, but it's still possible. You know, capitalize on that counterattack hit, get that 25% extra damage, and also don't use your awakenings right when some of these bosses spawn in, because they're really highly, they're a lot more defense than if you just let them spawn in normally, and you can get a lot more damage that way. So I'm going to try to show that off with this boss. I believe if I can counterattack her with the 2A, it's just a one-shot gimmick. So, but hopefully I was able to show off, you know, Paladin a little bit, why I like her. I like doing lower level content, I like doing high level content, and honestly, I think she's really fun, and, well, I should say she's brain dead, but at least she's, almost. I think she's brain dead, but at least it's fun kind of farming content this quickly. You know, I love seeing times that are 30 seconds long, and it's the reason why. I mean, I showed it earlier. I'll play this character over my Paladin, despite my Paladin being brain dead and not as fun to play as my EK. You can't deny the results of getting 31-second times all the time, which is freaking awesome. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. There was my Paladin. And in the next video, guys, I'm going to be skipping some of my main characters. In fact, I'm going to go to my character select screen right now so you guys can see my current setup of my top characters on the game. I'm going to be skipping these fighters right here, which they normally would be the next 2, because their third awakenings are going to be coming here pretty soon, and I want to talk about those in particular. So we'll be moving on, and I'll leave it as a mystery as to who the next character is going to be. Nobody said it had to follow this order. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you nights later.